Hello viewers, and welcome back to the second part of our Roman colony build. So in the last episode we started building this nice port area for our North African Roman colony, and today we're going to be building the market forum for the port, small little lighthouse and a nice garrison to go alongside our military shipyard. So the first thing I wanted to start doing is I wanted to start to build the back of these port buildings or forum port buildings, and I wanted to start building some nice small triumphal arches that go in between to enter into the main forum square of the port area. So what I started doing here is I started thinking, okay, these could have been built out of the ruins of the Punic city that came before, so thinking about building them out of sandstone and then copying them to keep the order amongst them, to make them symmetrical. Then what I wanted to do is I wanted to make, again, a nice colonnade on the front of, or on the back of these buildings with some windows coming out so that you have nice shop fronts. So I'm thinking here that I could have things like armor shops, I could have fishmongers, things like that. But it also makes this really nice entrance to these shops and makes a really cool looking market square or forum area to this city. Now what I decided to do towards the north of this forum is I wanted to build a small basilica. Now I don't want to build a basilica that's going to be absolutely enormous. I want to build a bigger basilica in the main forum of the city as we go further into the city later in the series. But I wanted to build a nice basilica that kind of occupies 2 to 3 stories and serves as mostly ceremonial for port purposes and purposes for the forum of the port. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing a mix of different quartz blocks, calcite, diorite, and just a normal brick slab roofing. And I wanted to make it look like this nice textured but also deep colonnade on the front, but then also to have the top of the building be a little bit more simple because it simply just is the clear story on top of the main roof. So it's just entering light into the main hallway of this basilica, as you can see there. So I tried to keep it simple along the top here, so I've done a mix of the pale oak slabs and then some small windows. Now this could be a bit more ornate in the larger basilica that we make later on in the series, but I think for now it looks quite nice and it serves its purpose. Now on the interior I wanted to keep it relatively simple but also make it look quite beautiful inside. I didn't want to add too many colours, but I wanted it to look, pretty ornate at the same time. So what I'm doing here is I'm structurally thinking, okay, we're going to have arches that come in the bottom and the top, and they're going to stack on top of each other to hold up this big clear story in the middle. So we get this really beautiful central space. And then under these passageways, I wanted to build these cluster vaults. So I've tried my best to build some sort of cluster vault thing in Minecraft over here. And it gets this nice effect underneath these walkways. And as you can see, we've got this beautiful lighting effect on the inside from the clear story windows when the sun goes down throughout the day in the game. And just thinking on the top level here, I've just put some barrel vaults, so I've just put some stairs, just going all the way along in this nice barrel shape along the top of the basilica. I think it turned out really nicely, to be honest. Then what I wanted to do is I wanted to put a nice little temple to serve the forum. So this is actually a temple design that we built in a previous tutorial video. I've just edited it a little bit to make it a bit more contextual with the city. And then I've added these nice little colonnaded buildings to the side. Now at the moment I'm using these as like trade storage rooms. I might change these later on in the series if the buildings around it just overpowered them and we see, okay, it looks a little bit dodgy, but I think at the moment it serves its purpose. Just building some stairs as well, and I'm thinking about the other side of the forum. So we're going to have nicer shops maybe on the other side in this smaller building, so it's not connected directly to the port, but it's connected more so to the residential district to the back. Now again, we're putting a nice triumphal arch in the middle over there, just to frame the entrance and exits to the forum. And then we're just building the shop fronts into these other buildings towards the side. Now what I wanted to do as well, as I did this with the previous buildings, but I wanted to add a bit of texture to the bottom with some sandstone to make it look like they've been built on top of some ruins. And then over here I've started to build the garrison or port area, or the garrisoned area for the shipyard, for the military ships. So I've got a tower here which you might have seen in one of the previous videos. I've just used the same design. And then I've decided I'm going to build a new wall design along the back here. So I'm thinking this is more like a military wharf rather than a main city defense wall. So I'm keeping it simple with some nice arches along the front here. And then I'm filling in the arches with calcite and diorite with a little bit of a foundation of sandstone. Now what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it so there could be an entrance for small ships or small boats. So something that could, go out fishing or could go out to a larger ship at sea. So I've had that included over here. And then I wanted to extend this land out a little bit again, so a little bit more dodgy world edit terraforming, but we've got a little bit more space for a wall and a little bit more space to build things behind the wall. But I guess the idea of this is to make it a fort area or a garrisoned area to protect the ships that are docked at the city shipyard. I've just started to clear this land on the other side, and we're going to build a nice lighthouse on this side. And I've started to fill in the back of this garrison space. Now I'll show you this more in detail when we get around to the tour section of the video. But the main things I wanted to think about doing here was thinking, okay, do we have like encampments inside the garrison? Do we have storage areas? Do we have things like target ranges and training areas for the soldiers that might be stationed there? And then later I changed this a little bit to add a little bit more accommodation. But you kind of get the idea. This is not going to be like the main military barracks of the city, but it's one of the major ones, so it needs some sort of accommodation. Now we're going to come around to the lighthouse. What I decided to do here is I decided to make this look a bit more like a rocky outcrop rather than just like a sandbar that's coming out into the ocean, because it makes more sense that the lighthouse would be built on something that's a bit more stable. So what I'm doing here is I'm building something that resembles the ruins of a previous lighthouse that may have been of the Punic time to the front of it, and then I'm building something that resembles something like a Roman lighthouse right directly behind that, with a new foundation but still maintaining this ruined sandstone structure in front of it that looks like it's collapsed into the sea. So I guess this I'm keeping it quite simple and quite functional in terms of its design, but it starts to come together quite nicely when you look at it as a whole. As I come around the back of this lighthouse, I'm thinking with this beach area that I'm thinking this could be like a soldier training area for when soldiers need to go out to sea to train their boat and shipfaring skills. But it also could be just used as like a soldier fishing area. But the idea is that this area behind the garrison would be reserved solely for military use. So you can see we've got a couple of little boats being built here, some fishing nets, and just these little things that might be needed out at sea. And now getting onto the tour section of our video. So in the previous episode we built this trade customs building that I'm going to use. I've not touched this. We're going to do that in a later episode when we move further into the city. But what I've started to do is I've started to think and replan some of these areas. We've got all of this to build in later episodes, so I'm going to come back onto this northern, this other section of the port in a later video when we get further up inland. But at the moment, focusing on the port area and the coastal area of the city and growing inwards, we've started to build the market forum area for the port. We've got a nice little lighthouse over there, which I think complements really nicely with that mountain in the background. Just has this like really cool view, an imposing view of this mountain, and like it just looks so cool, I think. Then we come towards this forum, as I mentioned before. Got a nice little building here and a nice entrance through the archways. And I think this is looking really nice. It's not totally symmetrical. And it's got a little temple over here. It's not totally symmetrical, but I think it does the job. So this is a design that we used in a previous tutorial video, and you might have seen in previous videos in other cities. This area over here for the forum, we've got a nice like storage area, I'm thinking at the moment. And then we've got our main shopping area for the Roman forum, or the Roman forum for this North African colony. So I'm thinking on this side we put some nicer shops. So these have like painted walls. So we have like a small taverna, restaurant sort of thing in there. In this one we've got a honey shop. This one over here we've got weapons, and then we've got an armor shop in this one over here. So I'm thinking more like high quality products and things that are already crafted, or restaurants. So again here we've got another type of taverna, but this is like a sit down taverna restaurant in here. Like a canteen basically. But the idea is that these ones are a bit nicer. I guess like the higher trade and the higher level shops are going to be in the main forum in the main part of the city. Now moving on to this basilica, we've got this like ceremonial basilica as part of this port area. Now it's not this like incredibly huge and ornate basilica, but it still looks pretty pretty good, I think. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I'm really excited to see what I do and what I come to build with a bigger one, with a bit more colour on the inside. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. It looks like just, you know, it has just the right amount of colour that I think it needs at the moment. But then a later basilica having a lot more colour. But these vaults in these alleyways turned out really good, and this like central space just looks great, I think. I'd like to know what you think in the comments, but I'm thinking this is looking pretty mega. Now coming towards this side over here, I guess the plan is in later videos we build some residential stuff along the seafront that basically is like the first line of defense from the sea. So maybe this could be like, I don't know, fishing buildings with then residential on top of it. And then coming to the other side of the forum, we have again our triumphal arches, and we've got these buildings that we built in the last video. We just finished them off. But I'm thinking these could be like the imported products. So here we've got some terracotta pots being sold in this one. In this shop, we've got a fishmonger, so naturally it comes from the port area with then access again to the port from the back. So the fishing boats will come into the port, they'll offload their fish. An example here, we've got a wine shop. So naturally, you would have wine coming from all different parts of the empire. So we've got one there. Got a nice triumphal arch again. And then this is the same sort of thing over here. I mean, I've got a couple of different shops. I mean, here I've got some sort of armor shop. Here I've got a wall shop. But you kind of get the point. A whole variety of shops in this area. Now what I've decided to do on top of these buildings, and I've done this for both of them, and I might change it later on in the series depending on what use we get out of these. I'm thinking this could be some sort of port registry office. So it has a good view of the port over here, and I guess that needs to have a little bit more detail added in over time, and I guess when I settle on what it is, we can do that. But I guess the idea for now is I've got it as like a little office library space on top, which keeps all of the Port Authority's records. Similar sort of thing in the other building as well next door. Now moving on to the garrison area, what you might notice is with this like military shipyard, I built these fences in between these with these chains on top that look like they could be spikes. So I guess that protects your ships. And then moving on to the garrison, I've built just a very simple garrison with storage areas, nice tower over there which has some accommodation inside it. We've got a shooting range for archery practice, and then again some more different examples of like tent accommodation for your soldiers. We've got an exit out for the boats. And then one thing I've added that I didn't add in the last video is I realised that I built the shipyard and there was no entryway onto the ship. So I guess this is like the temporary solution, those platforms at the moment. We got a cow here, which I feel really bad about keeping prisoner, but you know, such was the nature of cargo. I guess it's just an AI, but you know, anyway. Now on top of the wall, we can see obviously what's going on at sea. And then we've got something that I added actually later on in the video off camera, which is some sort of officer accommodation that looks over the sea. Now, I guess this is something that we could probably add more so across the garrison. I think it looks quite cool. Now, coming on to the final part, we've got a small wharf, which I might just adapt in later videos, but I'm going to leave it for now just to see how I feel about it. And then here we've got this fishing beach or soldiers beach where they have like just these boats left out for them to use to do their boat practice, but also to go out fishing for food. And then lastly, but not least, we've got our nice little lighthouse, which is built alongside some nice ruins and has this really lovely view of the city. When the city expands out towards the hill, it's going to look great. And there we have it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'd like to know what you think in the comments. Let me know your ideas and things that you think we could build. I'm thinking in the next video we continue towards the other end of the port and we flesh it out with some residential areas, but also some fishing industry stuff. And then later on we start moving into the main part of the city. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Otherwise, really hope you guys have enjoyed. And until the next one, goodbye.